Katanchana smrite yasmin dushkaram sukaram bhavet smrite viparitam syat Sri Chaitanyam namavitam. Okay, where are we actually? Did we finish fraternal loving affairs? I don't think so. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Pranam Prabhuji. No, we haven't finished.
Yeah, stopped when there is full knowledge of Krishna's superiority, yet dealings with him on friendly terms. That respectfulness is completely absent. That stage is called affection, right? There?
I think we were when there are dealings between Krishna and his friends which are completely devoid of any feelings of respect.
Okay. Fine.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam.
Dandas, welcome back, Mataji.
Thank you. Prabhuji, which chapter should I share?
Fraternal loving affairs. Chapter 42.
Can I read, Prabhuji?
Yeah, but do you know where to read from? Not from the beginning. Okay. We have already covered quite a bit of it. You have to go to.
आप है ना नीचे आ जाओ थोड़ा सा आपको आना पड़ेगा. You just find where there are dealings between Krishna. The paragraph starts from there.
When there are dealings between Krishna and his friends?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Should I start, Prabhuji?
Yes.
When there are dealings between Krishna and his friends that are completely devoid of any feelings of respect, and they all treat one another on an equal level, such ecstatic love is friendship. In friendship is called sthai. When one is situated in this confidential, friendly relationship with Krishna, one shows symptoms of love such as attraction, affection, affinity, and attachment. An example of sthai was exhibited when Arjun told Akrur, "My dear son of Gandhini, please ask Krishna when I am able to embrace him in my arms." When there is full knowledge of Krishna's superiority, and yet in dealings with him on friendly terms, respectfulness is completely absent, that stage is called affection. There is one brilliant example of this affection. When the demigods, headed by Lord Shiva, offering respectful prayers to Krishna, describing the glorious opulences of the Lord, Arjun stood before him with his hand on his shoulders and brushed the dust from his peacock feather. This Arjun living in Vrindavan is different from the friend of the same name to whom Bhagavad Gita was spoken. When the Pandavas were banished by Duryodhan and forced to live incognito in the forest, no one could trace out where they were staying. At that time, the great sage Narad met Lord Krishna and said, "My dear Mukunda, although you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the all-powerful person, by making friendship with you, the Pandavas have become bereft of their legitimate right to the kingdom of the world. And moreover, they are now living in the forest incognito. Sometimes They must work as ordinary laborers in someone else's house. These symptoms appear to be very inauspicious materially, but the beauty is that the Pandavas have not lost their faith and love for you in spite of all these tribulations. In fact, they are always thinking of you and chanting your name in ecstatic friendship.
I mean, how wonderful it is that is mentioned here that sometimes they must work. They must see. They're. I mean, if you imagine actually what their position is, they're. I mean, they're. Yudhishthira Maharaj is the emperor of the world. It's not like some ordinary post. Emperor of the world, and they sometimes they must work as ordinary laborers in someone else's house. These symptoms appear to be very inauspicious materially, but the beauty is that the Pandavas have not lost their faith and love for you in spite of all these tribulations. In fact, they're always thinking of you and chanting your name in ecstatic friendship. It's not just friendship. Of course, friendship with Krishna is always ecstatic, but then the point is that is brought out that their ecstasy was not affected by all these tribulations that they went through. Yes, Madhuri, please proceed.
Another example of acute affection for Krishna is given in the 10th canto, 15th chapter, verse 18 of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the pasturing ground, Krishna felt a little tired and wanted to take rest. So he lay down on the ground. At that time, many cowherd boys assembled there and with great affection began to sing suitable songs so that Krishna would rest very nicely. There is a nice example of the friendship between Krishna and Arjun on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. When the fighting was going on, Ashwathama, the son of Dronacharya, unceremoniously attacked Krishna, although according to the prevailing rules of chivalry, one's chariot driver should never be attacked by the enemy. Ashwathama behaved heinously in so many ways that he did not hesitate to attack Krishna's body, although Krishna was acting only as charioteer for Arjun. When Arjun saw that Ashwathama was releasing various kinds of arrows to hurt Krishna, he immediately stood in front of Krishna to intercept all of them. At that time, although Arjun was being harmed by those arrows, he felt an ecstatic love for Krishna, and the arrows appeared to him like showers of flowers.
So, I mean, this is a very important point because in the execution of Krishna consciousness, some things may appear to be difficult. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the obstacles that I encounter in serving the Lord are my greatest sources of ecstasy. So here you can see that Arjuna was being harmed by those arrows, but he felt an ecstatic love for Krishna, and the arrows appeared to him like showers of flowers. So this should be our attitude also, although it may be very difficult. But as we say, philosophy is meant for living. It's not meant for just preaching. Philosophy is meant for living, and life is meant for preaching. So, here, I mean, it's quite an interesting thing that this is not something which can be conceived of with ordinary conditioned mind. So arrows appear to him like showers of flowers, although Arjuna is being harmed by those arrows. So the difficulties that we encounter in serving Krishna, in trying to attain love of God, we should be we should consider that as decorations in the process of practicing pure devotional service. Any thoughts, comments?
Roji, that's a beautiful thought that philosophy is meant for living and life is meant for preaching. It's very practical and
Yeah, actually, I mean, I always had that understanding, but it was articulated first by Harila Prabhu, that exact phrase, So, I mean, I love that phrase, although, I mean, it was obvious to me, but I could not articulate it so well. So Harila Prabhu articulated it very well by putting it in the form of a phrase. Life is meant for, so philosophy is meant for living and life is meant for preaching. We need not feel skeptical that this is only possible for Arjuna. Will it be possible for us? It will be possible for us if we have faith, at least theoretical faith, that the obstacles that we encounter in serving the Lord or in practicing pure devotional service are like decorations. So at least we have that theoretical faith, then we can also experience this. May not be immediately, but then once we have that faith, that guarantees the success in experiencing it. Please go ahead, Manj.
There is another instance of ecstatic love for Krishna in friendship. Once, when a cowherd boy named Rishabh was collecting flowers from the forest to prepare a garland to be offered to Krishna, the sun reached its zenith. And although the sunshine was scorching hot, Rishabh felt it to be like the moonshine. That is the way of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. When devotees are put into great difficulties, even like the Pandavas as described above, they feel all their miserable conditions to be great facilities for serving the Lord.
Now, again, this theme is repeating again and again. So, okay, there are two stages here. First stage is to tolerate the miseries. And even above that stage is to think that the miserable conditions are great facilities for serving the Lord. So that's a very exalted platform, but we can all come to that platform. The process of pure devotional service guarantees that. We should have faith. Just like Prithivite Ache Yata Nagaradri Gram Sarvatra Prachar Hove Moranam. Who would have imagined that the names of Krishna will actually be, names of Lord Chaitanya will actually be chanted in every town and village of the world, in some remote village in Africa, in Siberia, where prisoners were sent for some very difficult punishment. In these places, Lord Chaitanya's names would be sung. It has happened. Why did that happen? Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada. So all of them, they had full faith in what Lord Chaitanya had said. So therefore it happened. So similarly, when we read these narrations, if we have faith that the miserable conditions can also be experienced as great facilities for serving the Lord. The passage that is being spoken about here is fantastic. I mean, we know right now how scorching hot it is, the summer, peak summer. We are in the middle of peak summer. It's scorching hot. But if that appears like the moonshine, what a contrast. So that's possible. That's possible. So it is not like some poetic description here. If Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur and everybody has said it's considered it as a poetic description, that Prithvite Yata Nagradiga is just a poetic description. It's not a poetic description. They took it with faith. Similarly, we should not just take this as some poetic description. If we take it with faith, we'll see that happening in our lives. Okay, you can go ahead, Manish.
Another instance of Arjun's friendship with Krishna was described by Narad, who reminded Krishna, when Arjun was learning the art of shooting arrows, he could not see you for so many days. But when you arrived there, he stopped all his activities and immediately embraced you. This means that even though Arjun was engaged in learning about the military art, he had not forgotten Krishna for a moment. And as soon as there was an opportunity to see Krishna, Arjun immediately embraced him. One servant of Krishna named Patri once addressed him like this: My dear Lord, you protected the cowherd boys from the hunger of the Aghasur demon, and you protected them from the poisonous effects of the Kaliya snake. And you also saved them from the fierce forest fire. But I am suffering from your separation, which is more severe than the hunger of Aghasur, the poison of Lake Kaliya, and the burning of the forest fire. So why should you not protect me from the pangs of separation? Another friend once told Krishna, My dear enemy of Kans, since you have left us, the heat of separation has become extraordinary. And this heat is felt more severely when we understand that in the Bhandirvan, you are being refreshed by the waves of the cooling river known as Bhanu Tanaya Radharani. The purport is that when Krishna was engaged with Radharani, the cowherd boys headed by Subal were feeling great separation, and that was unbearable for them. Another friend addressed Krishna thus: My dear Krishna, O killer of Aghasur, when you left Vrindavan to kill King Kansa in Mathura, all the cowherd boys became bereft of their four bhuta, the elements earth, water, fire, and space. And the fifth bhut, the air, was flowing very rapidly within their nostrils. When Krishna went to Mathura to kill King Kansa, all the cowherd boys became so afflicted by the separation that they almost died. When a person is dead, it is said that he has given up the five elements known as bhuta, as the body again mixes with the five elements from which it was prepared. In this case, although the four elements, earth, water, fire, and ether, were already gone, the remaining element, air, was still very prominent and was blowing through their nostrils furiously. In other words, after Krishna left Vrindavan, the cowherd boys were always anxious about what would happen in his fight with King Kansa. Another friend once informed Krishna, when one of your friends was feeling much separation from you, there were tears covering his lotus eyes, and so the black drones of sleep became discouraged from entering his eyes and left that place. When there is a lotus flower, the black drones fly into it to collect honey. The eyes of Krishna's friend are compared to the lotus flower, and because they were full of tears, the black drones of the black drones of sleep could not collect honey from his lotus eyes and therefore left the place. In other words, because he was too much afflicted, his eyes were full of tears and he could not sleep. This is an example of staying up all night because of separation from Krishna. An example of helplessness is described in the following statement. Due to Krishna's departure from Vrindavan to Mathura, Krishna's dearest cowherd boys felt as mentally light as possible. They were like fragments of cotton lighter than the air, and were all floating in the air without any shelter. In other words, the minds of the cowherd boys became almost vacant on account of Krishna's separation. An example of impatience was also shown by the cowherd boys when Krishna went to Mathura. Out of the sorrow of separation, all these boys forgot to take care of their cowherding and tried to forget all the melodious songs they used to sing in the pasturing ground. At last, they had no desire to live any more, being separated from Krishna. An example of stillness was described by a friend of Krishna's who informed him in Mathura that all the cowherd boys had become just like leafless trees on the tops of hills. They appeared almost naked, being skinny and frail, and did not carry any fruits or flowers. He informed Krishna that all the cowherd boys residing in Vrindavan were as still as the trees at the tops of the hills. Sometimes they felt diseased from their separation from Krishna, and being so greatly disappointed, they were aimlessly wandering on the banks of the Yamuna. There is also an example of madness caused by separation from Krishna. When Krishna was absent from Vrindavan, all the cowherd boys became bewildered, and having given up all kinds of activities, they appeared to be mad and forgot all their regular business. They were sometimes lying down on the ground, sometimes rolling in the dust, sometimes laughing, and sometimes running very swiftly. All of these symptoms gave them the appearance of madmen. One friend of Krishna's criticized him by saying, "My dear Lord, you have become the king of Mathura after killing Kansa, and that is very good news for us. But in Vrindavan, all the residents have become blind from their continuous crying over your absence. They are full only of anxieties and are not cheered at all by your becoming the king of Mathura." Sometimes,
What an analogy! What a description! All the residents have become blind from their continuous crying over your absence. They are full only of anxieties and are not cheered at all by your becoming the king of Mathura. So it is explained that when later on also when Uddhava visits Vrindavan, Sanatan Goswami explains that Vrindavan had become like a desert actually after Krishna's disappear. After Krishna left Vrindavan, all the residents of Vrindavan were deep distressed. Govardhan was sinking. That was the condition. But when Uddhava actually enters Vrindavan, that's not what he sees. Rather, he sees life going on regularly as if Krishna was present, So Krishna, Sanatana Goswami explains that Krishna gave him a glimpse of that Vrindavan when Krishna is present also. Of course, it's explained that anyway, I won't go into the detail of. Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. Krishna is always so present in his bhava form, as Prabhupada explains. So that's a very intricate thing that Sanatan Goswami explains that when Uddhava entered Vrindavan, the Vrindavan which he saw was not the Vrindavan which was which was externally visible. Please go ahead.
sometimes
I found that very interesting. How intense it is that the separation from Krishna is so intense that the residents have become blind from their continuous crying over Krishna's absence. Please go ahead.
yes. Sometimes there were also signs of death caused by separation from Krishna. Once Krishna was told, "My dear enemy of Kansa, because of their separation from you, the cowherd boys are suffering too much, and they are now lying down in the valleys, breathing only slightly. In order to sympathize with the boys' regrettable condition, even the forest friends, the deer, are shedding tears." In the Mathura Khand chapter of the Skanda Puran, there is a description of Krishna and Balaram surrounded by all the cowherd boys, always engaged in taking care of the cows and calves. When Krishna was met by Akrur at the potter's shop in the city of Drupad Nagar, because of the similarity of their bodily features, they made intimate friendship. I'm so sorry, did I say Akrur? When Krishna was met by Arjun at the potter's shop in the city of Drupad Nagar, because of the similarity of their bodily features, they made intimate friendship. This is an instance of friendship caused by the attraction of similar bodies. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 71st chapter, verse 27, it is stated that when Krishna arrived in the city of Indraprasth, Bhim was so overwhelmed with joy that with tears in his eyes and a smiling face, he immediately embraced his maternal cousin. Following him were his younger brothers, Nakul and Sahdev, along with Arjun, and they all became so overwhelmed at seeing Krishna that with full satisfaction they embraced the Lord, who is known as Achyut, the infallible. There is a similar statement about the cowherd boys of Vrindavan. When Krishna was on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all the cowherd boys all the cowherd boys came to see him wearing jeweled earrings in their ears. Becoming so greatly overjoyed, they extended their arms and embraced Krishna as their old friend. These are instances of full satisfaction in friendship with Krishna. In the 10th canto, 12th chapter, verse 12 of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that even after undergoing severe penances and austerities and performing the yogic principles, the great mystic yogis can hardly become eligible to achieve the dust of the lotus feet of Krishna. But the same personality of Godhead, Krishna, is easily available to the vision of the residents of Vrindavan. This means there is no comparison to the great fortune of these devotees. The friendly relationship of the cowherd boys with Krishna is a particular type of spiritual ecstasy, almost similar to the ecstasy of conjugal love. This ecstasy of loving affairs between the cowherd boys and Krishna is very difficult to explain. Great expert devotees like Rupa Goswami express their astonishment at the inconceivable feelings which are in Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends. This particular type of ecstatic love shared between Krishna and his confidential friends further develops into paternal love, and on from there it may develop into conjugal love, the most exalted humor or mellow of ecstatic love between Lord Krishna and his devotees. That's the end of the chapter.
Yes. Yes. Any thoughts, questions, reflections? Anything that struck you?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandakanam.
Yes, Madhu.
Prabhuji, the Sakya relationship, it is almost like conjugal relationship. Could you please just elaborate on this?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Guruji.
I'm hearing some echo when I speak. Are you also hearing some echo?
No, Guruji, I can hear clearly. There's some background noise here. Maybe I'll mute myself.
No, I don't think it's from there. Hare Krishna? Yeah, maybe. All right. Okay. Well, I mean, from my understanding of what what is being said here is that my understanding of what's being said here is like, I'm just trying to give an analogy, although I don't know if the analogy is appropriate or not, in the sense that, I'm using it only to give a sense of it. Like, Prabhupada often compared practice of pure devotional service and perfect pure devotional service to a green mango and a ripe mango. You know, only the flavor is enhanced. That's what happens. So my understanding has been that all the rasas they're all love for Krishna, right? There is a certain, it is love, but then when it intensifies, it is still love, but it is what do you call it? Its taste is different. I mean, not fully different. Yeah, it is different, but not fully different in that sense. I don't know if the analogy is appropriate, but to just get a sense of it, it's not like some different thing, you know. Like, they're all features of love, as explained in the last paragraph. It says it further develops. Develop means something which exists, which develops, right? Like that. So in its full development, it is conjugal love, but not in its full development. It is, in that sense, it is. That's why it says that almost similar to the ecstasy of conjugal love, like that. That's not applicable only to the friendship, but it's it's common for all the residents of Vrindavan. What can one say about love? It's like such a deep topic. Mati, does that, I don't know, satisfy you in some marginal, partial manner at least?
Yes, Guruji. Yes, Guruji. Thank you so much.
See, the idea is that Vrindavan is a place where there is no trace of anything other than love. Nothing else is present there. It's just love, you know. So it's not that there is some attraction towards Krishna's opulence and also Krishna's love for Krishna and things like that. It's just pure love. It's just pure unadulterated love, you know. So all the residents of Vrindavan, if you take love as a category, if you start dividing it, so it's not like it is the one common feature of everything is love, and it's only a question of more intensity. That's all.
Yes, Guruji. Yes, I get it. Well, I don't get it, but yes, I little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just talking from. I also don't have realization perfectly, but I just talking from whatever is the understanding of what I've gathered from this thing, from Prabhupada's books. It's not like I have some realization about it. I'm also speaking very theoretically. Yeah, without trying to get beyond outside the boundary of Prabhupada's teachings. Just try to stick within that and just explain it.
Yes, right. Thank you.
When I said that when parenthood also is more developed, the same feeling is more developed. I spoke that on the authority of the fact, on the authority that each higher rasa includes the previous components of the previous rasa. Any other thoughts, questions, reflections?
Prabhuji, can you just repeat what you just said about the higher rasa?
Higher rasa, like for example, conjugal rasa. Like in last class, I explained this. The Prabhupada gives the example of a wife. You know, so a wife does not have just conjugal relationship with her husband. She's sometimes friendly with her husband. Sometimes she takes care of the husband. Sometimes she's in a mood of being a servant. So she exhibits all these different modes. So just by the fact that she has a conjugal relationship does not mean that is the only relationship that she has. It also has these other components of taking care, of being like a friend, of being like a servant, and things like that. Prabhupada gives an example in the lecture. So each rasa has the components of the previous rasa also, like that. That's the point the Prabhupada makes.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so you can go ahead to the next chapter, parenthood.
Should I continue reading, Prabhuji?
Yeah.
Chapter 43, Parenthood. When ecstatic love develops into the relationship of parenthood and becomes steadily established, the relationship is called Vatsalya Rasa. The exhibition of this Vatsalya Rasa, standard of devotional service, can be found in the dealings of Krishna with his devotees, who represent themselves as superior personalities like father, mother, and teacher. Learned scholars have described the impetuses for parental love for Krishna existing in the elderly personalities who are in relation with him as follows. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose bodily complexion is just like a bluish new grown lotus flower, whose body is very delicate and whose lotus eyes are surrounded by scattered hair as black as bees, was walking on the streets of Vrindavan when Mother Yashoda, the beloved wife of Nand Maharaj, saw him. Immediately the milk began to flow from her breasts, soaking her body. Some specific provocations for parental love of Krishna are listed as his blackish bodily hue, which is very attractive and pleasing to see, his all auspicious bodily features, his mildness, his sweet words, his simplicity, his shyness, his humility, his constant readiness to offer respect to the elderly, and his charity. All of these qualities are considered ecstatic provocations for paternal love, parental love. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 8th chapter, verse 45, it is stated by Shukadev Goswami that Mother Yashoda accepted Lord Krishna as her son, although he is accepted in the Vedas as the king of heaven, in the Upanishads as the impersonal Brahman, in philosophy as the supreme male, by the yogis as the super soul, and by the devotees as the supreme personality of Godhead. Once Mother Yashoda addressed one of her friends in this way. Nanda Maharaj, the leader of the cowherd men, worshipped Lord Vishnu along with me, and as a result of this worship, Krishna has been saved from the clutches of Putana and other demons. The twin Arjun trees were, of course, broken due to a strong wind. And although Krishna appeared to have lifted Govardhan hill along with Balaram, I think that Nanda Maharaj actually held the mountain. Otherwise, how could it have been possible for a little boy to lift such a great hill? This is another example of ecstasy in parental love. This kind of parental love is generated in a devotee out of his conviction in love that he himself is superior to Krishna, and that without being taken care of by such a devotee, Krishna could not possibly live. One devotee therefore prayed to the parents of Lord Krishna as follows: Let me take shelter of the elderly parental devotees of Lord Krishna. They are always anxious to serve Krishna and to maintain him, and they are always so kind to him. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto them for being so kind to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the parent of the whole universe. There is a similar prayer by a Brahmana who says, let others worship the Vedas and Upanishads, and let others worship the Mahabharata if they are afraid of material existence and want to become liberated from that condition. But as far as I am concerned, I wish only to worship Maharaj Nand, because the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is crawling in his courtyard as his own child. Following is a list of respectable personalities who enjoy parental affection towards Krishna. 1. Mother Yashoda, the queen of Raja. 2. Maharaj Nanda, the king of Raja. 3. Mother Rohini, the mother of Balaram. 4. All the elderly gopis whose sons were taken away by Lord Brahma. 5. Devaki, the wife of Vasudeva. 6. The other 15 wives of Vasudeva. 7. Kunti, the mother of Arjun. 8. Vasudeva, the real father of Krishna. 9. Sandipani Muni, Krishna's teacher. All these are considered respectable elderly personalities with parental love for Krishna. This list is in order of superior importance, and thus we can see that Mother Yashoda and Maharaj Nand are considered to be the supermost of all elderly personalities. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 9th chapter, verse 3, Shukadev Goswami gives Maharaj Parikshit a description of the form and beauty of Mother Yashoda. He says, my dear king, the wide hips of Mother Yashoda were surrounded by silk and linen clothes, and her breasts were flowing with milk because of her affection. When she was churning butter and tightly holding the rope, the bangles on her hands and the earrings on her ears were moving. And from the nice decoration in her hair, the flowers were slackening and falling down. Due to her excessive labor, there were drops of precipitation on her face. There is another description of Mother Yashoda in a devotee's prayer. Let me be given protection by Mother Yashoda, whose curly hairs are bound with thread, whose hair is very brightly beautified by the vermilion placed in the part, and whose bodily frame derides all her ornaments. Her eyes were always engaged in seeing the face of Krishna, and thus they are always filled with tears. Her complexion, which resembles the bluish lotus flower, is enhanced in beauty by her dressing herself with many colorful garments. Let her merciful glance fall on all of us so that we may be protected from the clutches of Maya and smoothly progress in our devotional service. There is the following description of Mother Yashoda's affection for Krishna. After rising early in the morning, Mother Yashoda first of all offered her breast milk to Krishna, and then she began to chant various mantras for his protection. Then she would decorate his forehead very nicely and bind his arms with protective talismans. By all of these activities, it is definitely understood that she is the emblem of all maternal affection for Krishna. The description of Nanda Maharaj's bodily features is as follows. The hairs on his head are generally black, but some of them are grey. His garments are of greenish color, like the new grown leaves of a banyan tree. His belly is fatty, his complexion is exactly like the full moon, and he has a beautiful moustache. When Krishna was a baby, one day he was walking in the courtyard, capturing the finger of his father, and because he could not walk steadily, he appeared to be almost falling down. While Nanda Maharaj was giving protection to his transcendental son in this way, all of a sudden there were drops of tears in his eyes, and he became overwhelmed with joy. Let us all offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of King Nanda. Childhood age, childish dress, movements by the child, sweet words spoken by the child, nice smiling, and various forms of the childish play are considered provocations for increasing parental love for Krishna. The childhood ages of Krishna are divided into three periods: the beginning of Kaumara age, the middle of Kaumara age, and the end of Kaumara age. During the beginning and the middle of the Kaumara age, Krishna's thighs are fatty and the inner part of his eyes are whitish. There are signs of teeth coming out, and he is very mild and gentle. He is described as follows. When Krishna had only 3 or 4 teeth coming out of his gums, his thighs were fatty, his body was very, very short, and he began to enhance the parental love of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda with the activities of his childish body. He was sometimes stepping with his legs again and again, and sometimes crying, sometimes smiling, sometimes sucking his thumb, and sometimes lying down flat. These are some of the different activities of the child Krishna. When Krishna was lying down flat, sometimes sucking the toes of his feet, sometimes throwing his legs upward, sometimes crying, and sometimes smiling, Mother Yashoda, seeing her son in such pastimes, did not show any sign of restricting him, but rather began to watch her child with eagerness, enjoying these childhood pastimes. In the beginning of Krishna's Kaumara age, the nails of tigers were set in a golden necklace around his neck. There were protective tilak on his forehead, black mascara around his eyes, and silk thread around his waist. These are the descriptions of Krishna's dress at the beginning of the Kaumara age. When Nanda Maharaj saw the beauty of child Krishna with tiger nails on his chest, a complexion like the new-grown tamal tree, beautifully decorated tilak made with cow's urine, arm decorations of nice silk thread, and silk clothes tied around his waist. When Nanda Maharaj saw his child like this, he never became satiated by the child's beauty. In the middle Kaumara age, the upper portion of Krishna's hair falls around his eyes. Sometimes he is covered with cloth around the lower part of his body, and sometimes he is completely naked. Sometimes he tries to walk, taking step by step, and sometimes he talks very sweetly in broken language. These are some of the symptoms of his middle Kaumara age. He is thus described when Mother Yashoda once saw him in his middle Kaumara age. His scattered hairs were touching his eyebrows, and his eyes were restless, but he could not express his feelings with proper words. Still, when he was talking, his talk was so nice and sweet to hear. When Mother Yashoda looked at his little ears and saw him naked, trying to run very quickly with his little legs, she was merged into the ocean of nectar. Krishna's ornaments at this age are a pearl hanging from the septum of his nose, butter on his lotus-like palms, and some small bells hanging from his waist. It is stated that when Mother Yashoda saw that the child was moving, ringing the bells on his waist, smiling at her with a pearl between his nostrils, and with butter on his hands, she became wonderfully pleased to see her little child in that fashion. While Krishna was in the middle of his Kaumara age, his waist became thinner, his chest became broader, and his head was decorated with his curly hairs, resembling the falling of the wings of a crow. These wonderful features of Krishna's body never failed to astonish Mother Yashoda. At the end of his Kaumara age, Krishna carried a small stick in his hand. His clothing was a little longer, and he had a knot around his waist, resembling the hood of a snake. In that dress, he used to take care of the cows near the house. And sometimes he played with cowherd boys of about the same age. He had a slender flute and a buffalo horn bugle, and sometimes he played on a flute made from the leaves of trees. These are some of the symptoms of the end of Krishna's Kaumara age. When Krishna was a little grown up and was taking care of the small calves, he would often go near the forest.
Mataji, I think that you can stop there for a while. If
Yes.
there are any thoughts or reflections, because now we are talking about him growing up. Gopashtami pastime is connected to Krishna growing up, and I mean, from the cows, okay, this is not referring to the cows, it's still referring to the calves, little grown up. But when he starts taking care of the cows, that's the festival of Gopashtami. When they're small, they only take care of the calves.
So, Prabhuji, the Kaumara age is still 5 years?
Kaumara, Pauganda, Kaishora. So, I mean, Radhakishori Mataji, do you know the exact where it ends? I think Kaumara ends at around I need to look that up. Radhakishori Mataji, you know?
Prabhuji, this is given in the last chapter. Last time we read it.
What to what age to what age is what, I mean this thing really last chapter?
Yeah, the fraternal loving affairs we read in the last class. Nanpati Mataji, you can search by Poganda. This you'll find. I think it's up to 5 or 5 to 10, and then from 11 it's given like that.
Okay, Mataji, I'll try and search.
Oh, it's given in the starting only. Second para of the fraternal loving affairs. You can read it.
Okay. 5 years is Kaumara.
Second para from the top, from the starting.
Yes, Prabhuji, it's here. Divided Krishna's age into 3 periods. The age up through 5 years is called Kamara. The age from the 6th through the 10th year is called Poganda. And the age from the 11th through the 15th year is called Kaishava.
That's pretty interesting though. Even though he was fighting the battlefield of Kurukshetra and all that.
So they've divided the Kamara also into beginning, middle, and towards the end.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that division is natural. I mean, generally when speaking, you don't have one thing, you just divide it, right? Radhakishori Mati, I just remembered that regarding your previous question, you could say that I can't give the example of a mango, you know. Let me just use the example of an ice cream that's more easier to relate to. Suppose you have the base of the ice cream may be the same, but in terms of the sweetness, you could have varying levels of sweetness. So suppose you have an ice cream of, let's say, vanilla flavor with a certain sweetness, and then you have let's say a strawberry ice cream with a little bit more, which is more sweeter also. Apart from the flavor, it's more sweet also. You know, so then if you mix up these two things, okay. Anyway, I'm just trying to. Let's say the strawberry flavor is the sakya which is more sweet in terms than the vanilla flavor. At the same time, the vanilla flavor, you mix the two ice creams. The vanilla flavor is there within that strawberry flavor also, although the strawberry flavor is predominant. That's what I'm trying to say. Similarly, you get another flavor, then you get fraternal, then you get another flavor, which is also more sweeter. Then you get the conjugal. I don't know if that analogy helps to clarify it. So, because they're all ice creams and because they're all defined by their sweetness, so you could say that the ecstasy of friendship, there is a similarity between the ecstasy of friendship and the ecstasy of conjugal love.
Okay, Guruji. Okay, thank you.
I mean, I was trying to use the mango example, but you don't have a mango where different flavors can be mixed,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
intensity of the sweetness can also be
Okay.
mixed. But you do know, for example, let's say there's this chosa mango. Some people don't like that. I know devotees who don't like it because not that they don't like it, but it's just too sweet for them. You know. So even in mangoes, you have different intensities of sweetness also. It is not just the flavor alone, right? Yeah. But you can't mix the flavors there. The only thing is that that's why I did not want to give that analogy. But ice cream is more easier because you can mix, right?
Yes.
So if the strawberry flavor is very predominant and it's more sweeter than the vanilla flavor, although the vanilla flavor is mixed in that strawberry flavor also, it's like that.
Yes.
Everything has got a base. Everything is, the base is love. It's only a question of how sweet and what flavor it is. That's all.
Mhm. Okay.
Any other thoughts, reflections, questions?
Prabhuji, I read in one of the purports of Prabhupada wherein he says that, uh, I mean, I don't remember the exact reference right now, but it was said that Krishna created all the species and then he was not so happy, but then he created human species and then he was satisfied because human species provided a way to get out of the cycle of birth and death.
Correct.
Yeah. And then, so if we see this human species is so close to how Krishna is actually in the spiritual world. So each of these activities, like as a mother, I have relished all these things in my child, what is being explained. Obviously, with Krishna, it's at a different level, but a mother relishes these kind of activities, these kind of walking and these kind of, the teeth coming and so on. So, so uh, I mean, it's my own realization that, we are so close to what happens in the spiritual world. Krishna just wants to, remove our amnesia. We've forgotten them. We've forgotten the spiritual world. And uh, everything here is arranged in such a manner that we can go back easily by identifying with what happens here also happens in the spiritual world.
Yes. It's not just we human beings on the Earth planet, because there are many species of human beings, including the demigods, the aborigines, and all that. So the two-handed form is the closest to God. And of course, yeah, okay. I just wanted to say that when we say human beings, it just does not refer to only earthly human beings. There are human beings. I mean, okay, you could say they're demigods, but then they're all classified in that category of human beings. They're higher human beings, like that.
But in Swargloka, do they have children? Do they bring up children like this?
They don't get pregnant, that much I know.
Yeah.
But interesting question, whether they have any children there.
It is that when one soul is leaving, the other one and the one more soul comes up. I mean, it's just that. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, we need to we'll studies of descriptions of heaven to figure out whether there are children there. There's no pregnancy that I know, but whether, I mean, children can be born. I mean, I don't know. Probably they conceive without pregnancy. I don't know. We'll have to see. Yes, Mansi. Yeah, that's a good observation. Whether there are children there or not, that's something which I'll try to find out. Um, nowhere in the Bhagavatam, nowhere. Yeah, okay. We'll have to think. Yes, Mansi. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, Prabhuji. No problem.
Any other thoughts, questions, reflections, comments?
Hi Krishna, Pranam Prabhuji. Can I ask two questions not related to this class?
Yeah, you can.
Prabhuji, in the yesterday's and day before yesterday's Mayapur class, you answered their questions. So I think day before yesterday's, it was like I think the humility or tolerance part, the Prabhu was asking everybody, and you answered that we need. I don't actually. There was so much noise. That day's lecture was not very audible. So I just want to know what did you answer and how did Prabhu concluded it? Because the very nice topic was going on, but there was so much disturbances.
No, his question was that I don't remember the part about humility though, but the other question I do remember very well was about whether we need to practice the qualities of goodness, whether we need to acquire those qualities
Yes, yes,
or just practice Ananya Bhakti.
yeah.
You know, so yes, Ananya Bhakti. My point was that yes, Ananya Bhakti brings those qualities. At the same time, uh, one of the elements of surrender is to accept things favorable and reject things unfavorable. So we have to accept those kind of qualities also. Like for example, in the Shikshashtaka, what do you call it? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, "Trinadapi sunichena taroriva saishnu namani namaradena kirtanasya sadhari." He asks us to be humble, more tolerant than blade of grass. So humility, tolerance, these need to be cultivated. Yes, you could say that they need to be, they can come from the process of sadhana bhakti. I mean, just from the process of bhakti. Yes, that's a fact. We don't cultivate them independently, but nevertheless, the question that he asked was that are these bhakti angas or not? I don't.
He
Because he's
asked
not a native because he was not a native English speaker. I don't know whether he even phrased the question properly. So I don't know whether when I answered the question, whether he understood it as an answer to his question. I mean, so generally because he's not a native English speaker, so I was not even sure whether he was phrasing the question clearly or what exactly he expected. But I just wanted to make that point that it is not that devotees neglect these qualities. Yes, they come from the practice of sadhana bhakti, but nevertheless, one has to think about being humble, think about being tolerant. So that's, I think, something like you're saying. Do devotees think about developing these qualities? Yes, of course we need to.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
terms of,
Asked
yeah,
that for getting Ananya Bhakti, should we do we need to practice it separately or it will come by Ananya Bhakti? I think this topic was going on, and you mentioned that do not require an devotee said Yashasti Bhakti Bhagavad Akinchanan.
yeah.
He mentioned. So this is what I just what then later part I did not hear because it was disturbance. So I just want to ask you from Prabhuji that though Yashasti Bhakti Bhagavata Kinchana, it's there that by practicing devotional service, when we see elevated devotees, when we read about the devotees from Srimad Bhagavatam and all, we naturally have a desire to cultivate. But along with that, but besides that, we have to practice pranadapi and all. This is
So
what
my
I.
point, that's why I gave an analogy I gave an example in the class. If some devotee comes and shouts at me, I'm supposed to tolerate it. I mean, so am I supposed to practice tolerance there? Yes, I'm supposed to practice tolerance there. Is there practice of tolerance Ananya Bhakti? It is, because you're doing it because as a devotee, you are not supposed to fight back, right? So you're practicing there, no? You cannot ignore it, right? So you are practicing the quality of tolerance there when some devotee comes and shouts at you. So is that practice not bhakti? It is bhakti. That was the point that I was trying to say, because accepting things favorable is one of the elements of surrender.
Yeah, you mentioned this point also. Yeah. Prabhuji, in
So
the
it is
yes.
not, I mean, that's why I felt that the question was not, if we think that for these things you need to practice something else, you can acquire this only by some other means, or we would also endeavor, but through some other means to acquire this. No, that's wrong. But nevertheless, we have to acquire these qualities. I think the question is more about acquiring. That's why because the native speaker was not a native English speaker, I was not very clear what exactly he was asking. Whether we need to acquire or not acquire, we need to acquire, obviously, but through the practice of sadhana bhakti, through the practice of bhakti. Your devotion, sir.
And Prabhuji, in the yesterday's class, Janmashtami Prabhu, when he was asking about, he was mentioning Tatte Kampan.
Oh, okay. So, for example, a woman is being beaten up by her husband. Okay, and imagine that it's happening brutally. Are you going to tell her that this is your karma? So, tatte nukampam, just, I mean, whatever, it's all Krishna's will, and that's why it is happening and all that. Are we supposed to say that? So, my point was that, I mean, of course, I didn't articulate it, but Sridevi Mataji, I just asked the question and left it. I didn't give an answer to it, answer to my own question. Although I knew the answer, I was just trying to seek an answer from him to get a more deeper perspective. But I was not very convinced. I was not very, I mean, although his answer was correct, there's no doubt that his answer was correct, but the emphasis was not sufficiently clear. Okay, let me put it like this. If a woman is being brutally beaten up by her husband, first of all, that should be stopped. The emphasis should be to stop it, to prevent it, stop it. So if a devotee does not exhibit that quality of wanting to stop it, prevent it, then the person who's being beaten up will never be able to understand that this is Krishna's will. That ultimately, so when a person sees that the society of devotees condemns this act and they're doing everything that is needful to prevent it, then eventually when it is prevented, or whether even if they're unsuccessful in preventing, I mean, we hope that the devotees become successful in preventing, then that will give the devotee who has been beaten up or whatever the strength to understand that eventually, ultimately, it is all my own karma and things like that. But if we don't give them that strength, or don't give them that understanding, don't speak against that being beaten up, then where is that devotee who's beaten up? How will they ever develop the understanding that ultimately it happened by Krishna's will? It's not going to happen. They're going to blame Krishna.
So that's the thing you said, because when he mentioned that during his two children who was chanting that mantra and all, then you said it's easy to follow when it comes upon us, but it's very hard to deliver the message when it comes upon others. How to
Correct.
make them understand. So this
Yeah.
is what
So
actually yesterday also the noise was very very low, so I couldn't get what the communication was going on.
Yeah. So my point is, like, see, for example, there is a Gurukuli who, I mean, a child who studied in ISKCON Gurukul, who was abused and all that, who wrote a book called, it's a very sarcastic book, but a very eye-opening book called My Fault, My Karma. When a child is mistreated, you can't say it is your fault, your karma. It's all nonsense. Unless they're able to see that the society of devotees are very strong, they took strong action to stop it, prevent it from happening, then the child will continue the practice of Krishna consciousness. And when the child is able to continue the practice of Krishna consciousness, then they will be able to say, eventually they themselves will say, okay, ultimately it happened by the will of the Lord, or whatever, or what. I mean, there's nothing which moves without a blade of nothing which moves without the sanction of the Lord. So because of the fact that strong action has been taken, as devotees of the Lord, we are supposed to take strong action so that their faith in Krishna is not lost.
Yes.
We cannot say it is your karma. So even though philosophically it's a correct point, but what are you doing? I mean, you can't use philosophy to avoid responsibility to act. What did you do to act, to punish, to prevent in future? What actions have been taken? So without taking those actions, we cannot invoke the philosophy. This is what I'm trying to say. Actions comes first, then comes the philosophy.
Yeah.
Because it's all, by our own philosophy, you're supposed to take action. So the priority should be take action, not talk about philosophy there.
Yes, I got your point. Actually, yesterday also, the 2 days class, my speaker is very less audible at times. But in the last 2 classes, I couldn't hear anything. But your point is nice. When it comes upon us, then we should practice. We should understand it that way. But when it comes on others, then as a devotee, as a community, we should try to stop that. Otherwise, how will others have faith and how will they continue? Because they will think, oh, they are just like metalists. They are not come. Even the metalists come upon and help, but the devotees are not. Then what will make it different?
According to our philosophy, Arjuna fought. No, this is our philosophy. Arjuna even killed his own grandfather and all these things. So when we have that's a basic philosophy that we should not tolerate. We should not tolerate adharmic, sinful activities. We should take necessary action.
Yeah. Thank you, Roger. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you all for joining. We'll resume again the coming Thursday, next Thursday.
Thank you so much, Roger. Vanchakalparibhyo
Vanchakalpatarubhishya kripasindevecha padidanam pavanebhyo Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.